Good morning, everyone, and good morning, Daniel. Thanks
Good
for
morning,
joining.
Aseem.
Yeah,
How
well,
are
at least
you?
for those of us in the UK, right? It's good to kind of kick off a little bit of a UK live show for QuestionPro. This is actually going to be our first Fireside Chat. It's going to be a weekly series that we're going to be running live on all of your social channels, LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. A place that we're going to be able to kind of talk about things that are going on in the research space, talk about some of our clients, some of the things that we're learning, and highlight some of the folks that are on our teams that are really thinking about really smart ideas in the research and CX and workforce spaces. So welcome everybody. Do leave us comments. We are going to be doing kind of live interaction here. So do leave us comments. Let us know who's joined the show. We'd love to get those answered live. But let me start by at least introducing Daniel. Daniel is our wonderful research manager here in the UK. And he's been putting a lot of thought into how do we actually keep research communities active. So much so that we've actually written up this amazing guide. If we can get that on the screen, we're going to show you a quick QR code where you can actually download a guide all about how to increase activity and engagement within your research communities. But Daniel, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Aseem. Morning, everyone. Afternoon, wherever people might be. Yeah.
So Daniel does a lot of work on managing research communities on behalf of our clients. And this is something that, we kind of talked about maybe in our team meeting back in November, December. Daniel tends to be somewhat quiet about these things. And I caught it in our team meeting that he had come up with a bunch of new ideas on how to actually keep these communities active. And I was like, Daniel, we've got to tell that story. Let's get it into a guide. Let's get it out there for people in the research space, because I think a lot of researchers don't really think about the fact that you do have to put some effort into managing a community, keeping things active. And it actually helps you increase your ROI and kind of the results of your studies in the long run if you are doing that. So Daniel, thanks so much for putting together this guide. I think you're a true expert in this space. I know a little bit about community management, but more from a social media perspective. A little fun fact about me. I actually started as Microsoft's first social media manager back in 2007. Built a social media marketing agency around that and came up with a bunch of good community management best practices, but for the social media space. And I think working with Daniel, we've been able to translate that into research communities. And how do you take some of those same lessons from social media community management and bring that into research community management itself? So Daniel, before we kind of go into how do we actually keep communities active and engaged, what is a research community? Can we start there? What's a research community? Why should researchers be thinking about managing their own community or their own panel?
Yeah, thank you, Aseem. Now, just to step back a little bit, I think, thank you for telling that background story, because I think I began to realize how important this is. And when I began to speak and listen more to people who have communities and realize, oh no, this is like a really serious issue. Like people managing communities are facing this issue about engagement. So it will be good. And there's not a ton of content out there to really support community managers. So yeah, we're happy to share these top tips with a wider research community. So to make it really simple, basic, a research community, unlike the one you just described, the social media one, it's a group of people who participate in online research, basic, right? Whether it's B2B or B2C, it's just a group of people recruited together in one place, managed in one space, who respond to online research activities, basically.
Yeah, makes complete sense. And I think, for some of the researchers out there that are on this call, you might have heard the word panel before. I think, these words are somewhat synonymous, right? If you're managing your own panel, you're effectively managing your own research community. And I think customer advisory board is also kind of a good way to think about this. We really see a wide spectrum amongst our clients in terms of what type of research community is it, right? All the way from a really large panel where people are there for rewards and points and they're kind of there just to take surveys, all the way to like highly engaged customer advisory board where people are participating because they just want to be part of the company's next steps and innovation, and they're kind of a loyal person, and they want to be an early adopter, an influencer as part of your brand or your product or your company. And I think that's kind of a good segue into why is it actually important to keep a community or a panel active. Daniel, do you have any thoughts on why you should even be thinking about that? I think a lot of researchers just say, okay, I've set up a community or a panel. My job is to send them surveys and send them research activities. What else do I need to think about? Why is it important to think about more than just sending out your kind of research or surveys as they come up?
Yeah. So, I mean, to respond to that, you've got to think about why a research community, just like you said, as opposed to going to using a panel, an audience, a general panel every time. What would be the advantage of having an in-house custom research community as opposed to going out and paying for audience each time you do a survey? So the value really here in having a community is bringing your brand promoters to the table, right? So you could do a short recruitment and recruit people that your highest promoters that using the NPS question type and bringing your promoters to the table, and you go to them for continuous discovery, for agile research, right? That is the main thing, which works out mostly to be faster and cheaper and time cost efficient, really. And the quality there is also really high because you essentially, these are verified members. Why they are interested in your brand, they want to be part of it, so they have every incentive to give you real genuine responses. And because you are engaging with them all the time, there is kind of a relationship going, right? So the quality of data you get from such a response is higher, right, as opposed to going and mostly the engagement rate, which we'll talk about soon, will be much better than using an audience.
Yeah.
Now the thing about engagement is that mostly for most people, once you have your community set up and it's there, now you've got to keep it engaged, right? Because from time to time you're not going to have like research, like real company research or real commission research all the time, like mostly probably once or twice or thrice in a month, like full end-to-end research that is going to be used for business decisions. Probably not more than that, tops maybe 4 or 5 in a month, right? Depending on how busy the insights team are and the needs of the company. But then if it's going to be that, then in between those research, you've got to keep the community engaged so that when you need them for those research, they will actually be there and they'll be ready to give you real insights, right? So which is why keeping the community engaged is really important. And engagement could be anything. It depends on how people want to measure engagement. Three ways that I think that I highlight in the document people could do could be how many people, for example, have logged into the community for a certain period of time, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. How many people have logged into the community, or how many people have responded to a sample of surveys. So if you've done like 3 surveys, we can look at the response rate in comparison with the number of people in the community, how many people are actively responding to the surveys we are putting out, right? An average, the percentage of it. Or we could also say if we are giving the people points, the community members, if they are being given points, you could look at a certain threshold and say, okay, how many people are above this threshold of points with regards to the frequency of the surveys and the point that are being given for each survey. So it could be measured in any way as long as it's a good reflection of the health of the community and how the community is being active or useful and engaged.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that is key, right? That, if you are going to be kicking off a community as a researcher, you should have some metric, right? Some metric that actually says how engaged are people in the community. I think a lot of researchers already understand with a survey, incidence rate, completion rate, they know that these are really important metrics, right? That, hey, you don't want a survey that's going to have a huge amount of dropouts. It's the same thing for a community, right? You don't want to have a community where you're literally losing everybody from your community every single month. It's too expensive. It's too hard. It's not just about kind of keeping people active because of the feel good feeling, but it's actually, it's a money thing, right? You lose those people from your community, and you got to go re-recruit them, right? You got to go, spend more money on rewards and loyalty just to get people back into your surveys, into your research. And I think that brings up a good point. It's great to see Jake over here on the chat. For those of you that don't know Jake, this is the Research Geek. Go find him online. He's got a ton of great resources on market research and research tech. But this is a great question, right? It's are we just getting people that already love our brand? Are we biasing our research? And I think this is an important kind of a caveat or place to specify, right? A community is not just about getting brand ambassadors, right? I think that's one type of community. The other type of community is more of what you would think of as kind of a panel. We just need people that we can do research on. And we've got surveys. We need to send this out to people. And so as researchers or insights teams, we're actually going to invest in keeping a panel or a community so that we don't have to go external and recruit new people every single time, right? It's a cheaper, more effective way to do research. And we see this a lot with our clients, that it's actually not about brand ambassadors. It's actually not even about people who already use their product or know who their company is. It's kind of a separate thing, right? It's not branded with the company, right? It has nothing to do with the company. It just has to do with the topic. So let's take toothpaste as an example, right? If we're a big toothpaste manufacturer, we may not just be looking for people that already use our brand. We just want a general amount of people who we can survey and do research on who like toothpaste. And we don't want to bias them knowing about our brand. But the point about community engagement still remains, right? If I get 2,000 people into a community or a panel who want to do research around toothpaste and give us insights and answer surveys about toothpaste, I still want to make sure that there's about 2,000 of them at the end of the year that are actively engaged. Because if I lose 1,700 of them and only 300 of them are active at the end of the year, I've got to go re-recruit that whole community again. And now all of my surveys are going to have a lower response rate. I've got to go and put more budget towards rewards. And so no matter what kind of community is, whether it's an anonymous community or it's a community of brand promoters, you still need to work on engagement, right? And keeping those engagement rates high. Does that kind of add up with what you've seen with some of our clients, Daniel?
Yeah, exactly. So it goes back to the purpose of it. And also, actually, the type of it, like I said in the beginning, if it's a B2B or B2C, the relationship is a bit different, right? And we're trying to achieve different things here, right? So that could reflect on the profile of the people in the community, and the activities and engagement has to respect the profile of the people in the community. Yeah,
exactly. Jake, great question. Lloyd, thanks for the shout out. Keep them coming. This is exactly what we want to see on our live chats. It's great to engage with the community. Yeah. And Daniel, I think your point, and even Jake, your point about the fact that, hey, these communities are different, right? Some of them may be B2B, heavily engaged brand ambassadors. Some of them may be B2C, anonymous. Most of those people are just there to get rewards for doing your surveys. Mm-hmm. Where you are on that spectrum is also going to define how much work do you have to do to make that community active. So one of the things that Daniel has written about in this guide, if we can maybe get that QR code back up here, go download that full guide. There's a bunch of tips in terms of how to keep these communities active. But I think one of the key kind of insights that a lot of researchers don't think about is I've got to have some consistency in terms of activities that are going out into the community, right? I may not have a research project every month. I may not have a research project every week, but I should be doing something in the community that's allowing people to engage and respond on a weekly, bi-weekly, monthly basis. Now, picking what that rate of activity is going to be. Are you going to be putting something out there weekly? Is it going to be bi-weekly? Is it going to be monthly? That kind of depends on what type of community you're talking about, right? Exactly. If it's a B2B, highly engaged, community of promoters, maybe, if you do something with them once every month, you're going to keep them engaged, right? Because they're already loyalists and it's a small group of people. They probably know you already. Versus if this is an anonymous, high scale, 10,000 member B2C community where
Right.
people are there for rewards, we probably got to be doing something on a weekly basis in that
Right.
case. Is that kind
Right.
of how you think
Right.
about like what that activity rate should be?
Yeah, so that's exactly right. Depending on the people there and how busy you are, and the research that you've got going. So usually, what I would do, we have like if it's a really big community with a lot of people there, exactly, not the B2B type, we're doing like a weekly check-in, like weekly check-in survey with just a few questions, some fun activities, which we have examples of in the guide. So people check in weekly, and that can be a way also of verifying, the people in the community, because if you have it like geotagging, and you can validate, it's a continuous validation of the people you want in the community. So a weekly check-in is like a great. It's short, it's simple, it's fun. People would
Mm-hmm.
just like to engage in it to gain some points. So that will keep them engaged for when you want to do some real actual research. So I would say maybe once a week for really engaged communities, or once every 2 weeks for an average community not too engaged, and maybe once every month for a very B2B type, community.
Right. Like something smaller, highly
Yeah,
loyal people. Like they're mainly there because, it's not even about the points or the rewards, right? They just want to
exactly.
be part of your development roadmap. They want to be a part of where the company and the brand is going. So Daniel, tell us a little bit more about this idea of a weekly check-in, right? I do think that this is probably one of those aha moments for researchers and insights teams who are going to be kicking off a community. What I see is that the assumption is there's no need for a weekly check-in. We're just going to send out real research, right? Like whenever there's a real survey for us, we're going to go send that out. Why do you need a weekly check-in? What is a weekly check-in? Or bi-weekly, monthly, whatever cadence you want to run it on? What's the point of that sort of check-in? How does it work?
Yeah. So yeah, good question. That is actually a good one. That is one of the key strategies that we've been using, which is, so essentially, like we said in the beginning, we want to keep the people there active. They feel like they want to do something. In one of the communities that we manage, I was doing like moderation and listening. Like, right, this is where you can actually listen to what people are saying. Apart from, you want to be there, you want to be in the moment, you want to know what people are feeling and saying, right, about everything that is interested in your brand. So I was just listening, and people was like, giving comments about the community, and the type of activities, and the purpose of the community. So that feedback feed into why we brought in the weekly
Mm,
check-in. So it's just a short survey of asking people to give us feedback. How do they feel about the community? What would they like to talk about? Right. So there are a ton of things that people want to talk about. So there's no lack of ideas here, and plenty of
yeah,
opportunity for serendipity. Like I say, you could discover things, right? Things that you never
yeah,
knew about that people are thinking. So give us 3 topics you would like to talk about, right?
yeah,
So, and then, because we have a kind of a geo kind of tagging to that one, when you start recruiting, we recruit from the general audience panel, so all people come in. There could be, if you want a community of people in just in the US or in the UK, and we send out a recruitment survey, we could have people from India, people from Nigeria,
mm,
people from Kenya, everywhere, just signing in and added in the guise of being in the UK, right? So with this kind of that's one of the key advantages of the weekly check-in. We can actually keep discovering these people that we don't want in our community, and just bring them
mm-hmm,
out, right? Yeah. And then it's also a way of continually listening to the ideas and the feedback from the community, and making sure that they are happy, and they are engaged and motivated to
yeah.
respond, to give quality responses to your real actual surveys when you need them.
Yeah, no, it makes complete sense. And so, just to clarify for everybody that's kind of on the chat, these weekly check-ins, bi-weekly check-ins, monthly check-ins, it's not about doing real research, right?
Yeah.
It's not like your insights team is going to come out and do a bunch of data processing and SPSS analysis and come up with a full report on what this weekly check-in is. It's more about actually just letting the community speak, letting them feel heard, letting them kind of be engaged. This is something that even back in my social media days, we saw very often, right? That when brands kick off a community, whether it's on social media or a research community like this, they're in the frame of mind of somewhat being self-serving, right? Like, hey, if I'm going to be Microsoft on social media, like I want to talk about Microsoft stuff, right? That's the point, is like, hey, this is a megaphone for me to go talk about stuff. And I think Insights teams kind of take a similar approach to a research community, right? Like, well, the point of this community is for us to do research. So I'm going to send out a survey whenever I have something that I want to learn.
And expect quality responses.
Exactly. But if you think about it, like, that is completely opposite from the definition of what a community actually is. Exactly. A community is not about being self-serving.
Good point.
Right? It's about creating a culture, creating engagement. And so that we even did back in the social media days, right? I mean, yeah, of course, you'd have an editorial calendar that would talk a lot about what the brand is doing, but you had to also go in and just kind of put a post out there that says, hey, everybody, like, what are you up to this weekend? What's on your mind? What do you want to talk about? And I think that's exactly what you're talking about with this weekly check-in, right? Is like giving people an opportunity to just speak their mind, which for research communities, like, that's even more important part of the culture, right? Like, effectively, that's what the community is there for. Even when you're doing a survey or research, like, you want people to speak their mind. You want people to feel heard. You want people to feel like they're part of this community, they're part of the culture.
Exactly.
And the more you do that, the less that people are just going to be there to earn points and rewards and complete surveys, right? They're going to be there because they feel heard. It's just like any other community that you join in real life, right? Like, you're not going to go join a community if you're just being talked at the whole time, right? You want to feel heard. You want to feel a part of it. And that's what I think something like this kind of weekly check-in, monthly check-in does. And it doesn't have to take a lot of time, right? It can be some very simple questions, like, maybe, I don't know, give us like a sense of what some of those questions might be that would go into that kind of weekly or bi-weekly, monthly check-in. What would some of those be?
Yeah, great. So and this is one of the key advantages here in QuestionPro. Our community is like no other. It's linked to our research suite, right?
Right.
So you have all those great, interesting question types. We can take that directly into the community, not just only forums and polls. You can do max save, you can do conjoin, you can do heat maps, right? You can do hotspots. You can do drag and drop and all these interesting question types. You can use a scoring logic. Gamification is a real thing here. If you can really introduce gamification, I just did one yesterday where I just put a bunch of questions using our QXbot, new QXbot feature. Asked it to give me a few questions about a certain topic. He threw me some nice true false questions. I put in some scoring logic, and at the end of the survey, people can see their score at the end. And then if I can save that in a custom variable and give points based on that later on in the community. This is really, really fun activity that people can do, right? It doesn't have to be monotonous. You have a plethora, a variety of question types to use. Like, okay, if it's a product, let's say it's just a create your perfect kind of phone, and then you put a bunch of features there and ask people to pick the features and rank them, right? It's just a fun activity, but you can learn something real from there, what people value and what they consider an ideal phone, an ideal product, right? And this could be, it's just fun. It may not be something you really need. Or if there's a research coming up later and you want to find out what variables to put in there, you want to fine tune it, so some form of an early discovery before the real survey goes out, you can use that to kind of gather some ideas to structure that survey. And yeah, so all these question types are in there: hotspot, conjoin, max save. We have a ton of them, right? And then you can use them straight into the community. And to an earlier point that you made about rewards and the community getting engaged, I think the opportunity for the community members themselves to interact is also a really key thing here. So using forums and allowing the community to speak, and then someone actually moderating those comments, providing feedback, letting them talk back. And one of the things that we'll do is like maybe picking like the best contributor and giving them a reward. So everybody knows that, oh, if I put a little bit of thought in mind and write a really good response, I might be picked as the best contributor and get some extra
Right.
boost on my point. That is super, super engaging, and it really, really works. Yeah. So gamification and a great variety of question types, not too many, just one at a time, plus some feedback questions for weekly,
Yeah.
bi-weekly checking. Great, great, super engaged platform.
Very interesting. I think there was a ton of nuggets in there, so I want to start teasing some of these out. There was
Oh
a
yeah.
lot of really good, valuable stuff in there. So, I mean, I think one of the key points here is that there's different methodologies for going and doing these kind of weekly, bi-weekly check-ins, right? Part of it is in the survey, right? You can go and send out the survey. There's lots of different question types that you can use to kind of gamify the survey, create scores. There's forums that we have that will allow you to engage and kind of have a public conversation with people. And then there's quick polls that will allow people to kind of give a really quick answer and just stay engaged that way. But I do want to double click on the forums. This is something that Sean had asked me a couple of days ago. I want to make sure that we cover it in this session. Hopefully he's watching. How do you use the forums? Tell us a little bit more about that, because that's like a different space where you can kind of keep people engaged. They can engage with other people in the community. How do you typically think about using that part of the community outside of the forums or outside of the surveys to keep people active on the forums?
Yeah. So, so again, it's a community is to have people talking, right, about common interests and getting feedback and opinions on things. So the forums feature, what we call topics or forums, is each week or whenever you want to post it, you have a dedicated topic you want to listen to feedbacks on. You just throw it to the community. You can segment the community if you have different aspect of it to go to different aspect of the community based on segmentation. You can do that very easily, and throw it with a nice picture or something, and ask a really interesting question. Or what do you think about the energy situation in the UK or whatever it is, and throw in a picture there, and then you have a ton of people coming in and responding, some positive, some negative. You can do whatever and take that later on and do a sentiment analysis on it. It could be like we said in the beginning, just for giving people the space to talk about things that interest them. But like I also said, though, there's plenty of opportunity to learn new things about people who care about what you are doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that is
And
different
I
from
think
the surveys. Is just a standalone forum that can go in addition to the forum if people choose.
Right.
I mean, in addition
And I
to the
think that's
survey.
one of the upsides of the forums, right? Is that people can talk to them amongst themselves as
That's
well,
right.
right? And I think a lot of insights teams, again, they start with, well, what's the research purpose for this, right? Oh, if we're going to do a forum, I've got to make sure I'm moderating everything. I got to make sure that, people stay on topic and that we're getting good insights and nuggets out of it. But a forum can just be a place for people to talk amongst themselves. And that, if you have people doing that, the success of your community when you do send them real research, when you do send them real surveys, is going to be much higher. Some of the communities that I see Daniel managing, he'll put a forum topic out there. It'll have like 300 to 500 comments, just people talking back and forth, right? And it might be not completely related to the brand. It might be something controversial, something relevant, something timely. But just imagine that, right? If you get 500 comments on one of your forums with people talking amongst themselves, those people are finding value just engaging with each other, even outside of the rewards and the points. That's exactly the definition of community building when you see that kind of stuff. Now, you may not even read all 500 of those comments, right? You may not have time to, you're not going to go in and tag everything. You're not going to build a report from it. It's just there to keep people engaged, keep them talking amongst themselves, realize that other people are part of this community, and become a little bit more closer to what's actually happening in the research community at the end of the
day. Yeah, exactly. And one of the things I've enjoyed by doing some of this is listening to perspectives from different part of the world. So we have a community where we have different people from US, from UK, from India, from Germany, everywhere, Philippines, all over the continent.
Exactly.
And discussing on the topic and the differences in perspective is just sometimes just so interesting to watch. I just put out it's just a random topics on Botox. last somewhere night last year, and I had like amazing comment. I just enjoyed reading with all of them. It was really, really fun, and the community enjoyed listening to each other and engaging on that topic. Yeah.
Exactly. And Botox may not have had anything to do with what the research
Not
was
at
actually
all.
about,
That's
right?
the thing. That's
Not
the
at
thing.
all.
So
But it's
that
just
actually
something for
came
people
from,
to talk about.
yeah, that actually came from one of the check-in surveys, right? People suggest things that they would like to talk about, like topical things that are making waves. So can you bring this on board to talk about? And then they just go with it. So
that's another interesting point, and I know we're running a little over time, but I think it's a good point to cover, right? Like, where do you get ideas for this kind of stuff, right? The prompts that you're putting in the forums, the prompts that you're putting in these check-in surveys. You know, researchers are trained to think very, very hard about each survey question, right? What's the point of this survey question? What are the results that we're going to get? We always see that insights team, right? Then you go and you circulate that question set, that survey to all your stakeholders internally. Everybody edits it down to the minutia. But that's not what we're talking about here, right? Because this isn't for real research. And so you're just kind of coming up with ideas on the fly, right? You're letting people from the community even guide you, like, what are the things that they want to talk about? And then you're really quickly popping those into these kind of check-ins and forums and polls. Is that kind of how you approach it?
Yeah, definitely. So just looking over it. And it's important to keep the goal here in mind, that we're keeping the community hyper engaged and interested for when we want to do some actual research, so that the responses will be quality, they'll be engaged, they'll be high responses, right? That is really the value here. Is when people are interested, they are happy with what they are doing, they're going to give you really good quality responses.
Exactly. And let's not sugarcoat it. At the end of the day, if you're an insights team and you're investing in building a community or a panel, your goal is to do research. That's where you want to spend your time, right? So I know that there's a few people who are watching this right now and saying, but I don't have time to go and think of a weekly check-in every single week, or I put a forum topic out there every single week or bi-weekly. But I think your point is, don't spend too much time on it, right?
Don't
That's
overthink
actually
it.
Don't overthink it. Don't spend too much time on it. This should almost be a 15-minute, 30-minute exercise that you're doing, right? It should not be the bulk of your time. You don't need to overthink these questions. Just get something out there to keep it engaged. Let the community guide you in terms of what questions you're putting out there. And now we even have QXBot. You know, we can put one of these comments on the screen that will also help you just automatically generate question ideas using AI, so that you can just, again, not spend too much time on this, right? These are not surveys that need to go and be reviewed by the whole team. These are not, surveys or research studies that you need to spend hours and hours coming up with. For these check-ins, when the goal is to keep engagement high, it's actually a matter of like just getting something out there relatively quickly, not spending too much time on it, not overthinking it. Is that kind of the right approach?
Yeah, definitely. That's the right approach.
Amazing. Well, Daniel, thank you so much for coming on for our first
Thank you.
Fireside Chat. This is amazing. We'll get this QR code up here once again. Daniel has put together an amazing guide. You'll go to this blog post, and at the bottom of the blog post is actually a really nice PDF that talks about all the different question types that he uses for these check-ins, that talks about the kind of a strategy of how you would go about keeping people engaged. And if you ever need help kind of creating a community, managing a community, keeping people active, always feel free to reach out. That's what we're here for. So thanks once again, Daniel. Thanks everybody for joining us. Appreciate all the questions. Sean, great to see you. Thanks. I hope that forums piece was helpful for you. And again, keep the questions coming. We're here. We'll be here kind of every week, kicking off these fireside chats. And just like what we talked about, this in itself is a community. And this isn't about us talking at you. It's about us engaging with you. We want to hear your ideas. If you've got a topic, let us know. Come on the show. We're happy to have you. And we'll look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks so much, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Aseem. Look forward to the next one.